this recording. Can everybody see that? We're good? Okay, sweet. So welcome everybody to our first DB. I'm so thankful to be the leader of this DB. I'm so excited for our conversation today. Yeah, so let's go ahead and hop right into it. Going to shoot for the 30-minute range. It's 1:34 right now. Try to be done around 2. But yeah, let's jump right into it. So, number 1, what are the similarities and differences that you noticed in the AD remarks from Module 1? Yeah, let's actually just start right there. What did you like? Give us a quick little overview of what you listened to and what you noticed about it, and then whoever gives that baseline, we can like talk about the similarities and kind of differences that we all each had with our person. Anybody want to kick us off?
I can kick us off. Oh, go ahead.
All right. So I listened to the Stanford AD's talk, which was super interesting. I coach at a Division III college, super like academically rigorous, like really into the student athlete thing, student in all caps, athlete like next to that. So it was really interesting to hear from him the importance that the academic balance played for him, but also the way he views his role as like supporting a much larger staff of administrators. Whereas I think our athletic department here at Williams has a really similar, method, similar values, similar mission, but like our athletic director has a very small support staff of associate ADs. We have a really like flat org chart. It's like basically all the head coaches report to the same person. And so like her job becomes much more like advocating for athletes on the academic side and like on the administrative side, and like being a go-between between like the overall college administration and like the athletic department. Whereas like at a bigger institution, even though the values are the same, like there was so much more, seemed like that was less on his radar. And I thought that was really interesting to hear about.
Interesting. Amani?
I actually did Jill's one. She was the St. Joe's AD. It was kind of interesting because I'm from New Jersey, so that's kind of like one of my home schools. So I kind of know like I'm really like familiar with like the ins and outs and pieces of it, only because like I know athletes who went through there and I've heard about their experiences. So listening to her speak was very interesting because she's about like people, and like her thing is like, how can I reach out to a wide range of people that can help me better this university? And I think that's so important because I came from 2 other Division I schools before I got to Clemson, and like a lot of those ADs were very like different in a sense. And like I've had my first AD was like, I can do this by myself, like I don't need help, like I got this. And I'm like, you can't run a university like that. And then my second AD was like, nah, I need y'all input so I can figure out how to better this university. So I kind of compared her to Jill in a sense, because she's like, what valuable resources can I bring to this program that's going to help not only this program, but better the university, which will ultimately bring us more athletes. She also mentioned like education, like that's like a core piece to like just to like expand in the university. And I thought that was important because I think like when it comes to like sports and stuff, oftentimes so many people just focus on the sport and they don't think about, oh my gosh, like we're students behind the sport. So I liked how she actually incorporated the student athlete aspect and not just focus on making the university better as like the athletic perspective.
So I listened to the talk by Mike Hill from UNC Charlotte, and I think it kind of goes with a little bit with what Amani was just saying. He was focused a lot on like he's new there, and he doesn't necessarily want to come in and try and say he knows how to do everything. And he knows he's following up an AD that is very successful and is kind of a legend for them. And so he was saying that he really wanted to rely on the people around him that had been there longer and maybe knew more about the ins and the outs of Charlotte, and kind of just rely on them to help him do his job better. But then also obviously bring in his experience, and kind of just use those two to combine to make the program successful.
Vivian, what do you think?
I also watched the Stanford AD video, so I relate a lot with what Eileen said. I've worked with a couple of different sports teams, and it's all about teamwork, and he was very much like all about delegating and making sure that everyone was on the same page and making sure that his communication was top notch, which I've always found to be super important.
Yeah, I watched the same one as you, Valerie, the Mike Hill guy. He seemed really, really cool and just like a really fun guy to be around. But like she said, he was new. And so he's kind of jumping into this role that he's never been like a head AD. He was always an associate AD at Florida. But I thought one of the cool things about him was he was just all about relationships and people. And he really valued like you talked about how he kind of went around and just kind of learned from the people that were around him about what Charlotte was like and what the culture was. And so I thought it was really interesting to see how he took that approach to being a leader and kind of gaining the trust of the people that are working underneath him before he tried to go and make a bunch of changes. Like I think he said at one point, he's like, yes, there are changes that are going to be made, but he's not going to try to rush into anything. He's going to really focus on the people. So I thought that was cool. Okay, so moving on, as a modern day administrator, what do you guys believe are the more important attributes and skills necessary to be successful? And honestly, just to keep it simple, we can just go in that same order. Like that way we can just keep it rolling. So Eileen?
Yeah, I think like us like both like self-awareness and like awareness of what sort of organization and community you're stepping into is huge. And like sort of what the values are, both of your staff and the student body and the college as a whole. Like I definitely see that in the department that I'm in right now, of like managing, like, you know, we have a new president who's been here for about 5 years now, and she doesn't care about sports that much. And then like, but a lot of the head coaches have been here for a really long time. They're like, we want directors cups, and the president of the college is like, who cares? And so like the athletic director has to sort of manage that and help transition the values over to like a new set of values, while also sort of like hopefully like bringing some people, we refer to it as across the street, is like where all the like academic administration is, like bringing some of them over to be like, hey, like actually like what we're doing here in the athletic department is really helping our student body, and our student athletes are really thriving and like really like want to pursue these goals. So like what can, and like we're doing like literally everything that we can given the resources we have to help them achieve those goals, and like what can we do together to make that happen. Whereas like I feel like that's, you could be stepping into like a completely different set of values at a different institution, and so just being aware enough to like recognize like what are the forces that are competing, and how are you going to bring them together will be really important.
I think the impact of the pandemic kind of like changed the way I was going to answer this, because I feel like now like administrators just have to be like prepared for the unexpected. And I think like a lot of these administrators are still trying to like bounce back from COVID and kind of like recover. So I think they're kind of in like a dim like type of like feeling, because it's just like you don't know like what to do, what to expect. Like you just like there's just a feeling of uncertainty. So I think like now some of the skills that you need is like you got to be prepared for the unexpected, because like no one saw the pandemic coming. Like no one thought we were canceling sports for 2 years. No one thought we were about to be virtual for forever. So I think it's like being prepared for the unexpected, but also like quick to react. And I mean like quick to react in a sense of like not listening to what everybody else has to say, but like what's going to better your school like in that moment, or what can you do in that moment to like keep everybody on the same page. So I think it's also like a self-awareness thing. Like you got to be aware of like what's going on. You have to be aware like anything can happen at any moment in time. So it's kind of like really knowing what resources are around you, so you know where to go, who can help, who can guide you, versus just letting everything collapse at once. So I would just say like being aware, being prepared for the unexpected, and like a quick reaction about like being prepared for what's to come and taking those immediate steps to like help yourself, the university, and everyone around it.
I think my answer goes off of that a little bit. Like I think it's so important as a leader just to value the opinions and the experiences of those around you. You know, you may be at a higher level than them in like your rank, but that doesn't mean that you know better than them. And so I think it's super important, even if, you know, something that you're doing is working, to still, value their opinions and really listen to that, so that if there's a better way to do it, like you have that. And even if you don't end up going with what their suggestions are, right, like you're still making them feel valued. And so if they have something down the road that, is, a really good idea, they're going to be more willing to share because you're creating that, psychologically safe environment. I think just really thinking like, not thinking that you're better than other people just because of your title, and just really valuing their opinions.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what everyone has said before. I think that like communication is really a big thing, valuing other people's opinions and making sure that you're all working as a team, and then being adaptable, because that was like one of the big things that Amani covered, is that like, yeah, COVID hit and people had to find ways to work around that and still be able to get together and do things. And that's where we got Zoom from. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. For I guess I forgot to read this last little bit of this, but it says like choose a context, division, conference, whatever, and then you can share some personal experiences about it. But for me, it's obviously very contextual and situational, because at a D1 school, there's going to be a lot different expectations for Graham Neff at Clemson versus like the head AD at North Greenville University, D2 school across the street. Like, so for Graham specifically, I'll just speak about my personal experience witnessing him as an AD. I think that some of the biggest skills that he has is just personability and just being good in the spotlight. I think there's a lot of pressure on athletic directors at like the Power 5 level to perform, and he does a really good job of not just like backing down and like, letting the reporters or people asking questions walk all over him. He defends what we're doing here at Clemson a lot of the time. But he's also just a likable guy. And I think that's something that's really, really important, to have good status within the social world. But I also think like having a business mindset, organization mindset is really, really like a helpful skill. Because as we all know, with NIL and everything, like that's kind of the direction in which sports are turning. So I think just to look at it from a different point of view, I think that might be another skill that would be cool, or good to have, I should say. So let's move on. Number 2, what stood out to you guys from Dr. Forgive me, I have no clue how to say this, Andonoro's lecture? And when was the last time you saw complex leadership in action, either from yourself or someone else? So for me, like I remember like just a little bit of context from the lecture. It talked a lot about like seeing it more as like an organization as a whole rather than like this hierarchy of people. So it's not like, Valerie, you kind of talked about this when you were talking about the previous question, is just like, it's not so much that I'm up here and you're down here and you're down here and you're down here. It's more of like, we're just a bunch of pieces all coming together to achieve a common goal. So with that being said, what, like, thinking about that, what are y'all's thoughts? And also you can like, let's get like, you pretty much answer all of this, because I think they all kind of like come together, and then at the end we can come up with some kind of like complex adaptive leadership definition, I guess, if that makes sense. So like give your personal example, I guess, as well.
Well, one thing that I took away from the idea of like complex adaptive leadership is the like idea of like shifting culture. That like part of what complex adaptive leadership is like, it's like, okay, we've got this group of people and they're doing this one thing and we want them either to do it better or to like do it slightly differently, and like how do we manage that kind of transition? And right now I think generally post COVID a lot of people are feeling that, but on the team that I coach in particular, we're pretty bad for a little while, and like we're trying to like build that back up and have higher standards, which is like a really big culture shift, because the team culture used to be like super inclusive, like anyone could be on the team. We took walk-ons, we teach you how to row, like it didn't matter how athletic you were. And now it's like the top group of our team really wants to like go to nationals and do well and be on the podium, and the bottom group of our team like doesn't care as much about that. They want to be on a team and they want to have friends and work out together, and like all of those things are great. And it's just like, how do we get everyone's mindset to be on the same page? So I feel like I definitely haven't like mastered it, but like I feel like my boss and I do a lot of that sort of like adaptive leadership, because like we get individuals and like we start to understand why they're showing up every day, and then starting to sort of like herd them or like turn their focus like away from the like me side of things over to like the team, and like what they're contributing to the broader group, which has been challenging, but hopefully it's starting to move in the right direction, which has been cool.
I really enjoyed his lecture, honestly, because I'm like working on kind of like being a leader, trying to step up and like kind of like uplift the people who like I oversee and who are like under me and stuff. So one of the quotes I got was, anytime we have an opportunity for a conversation, it is an opportunity to learn something about our organization. And I feel like that's so important, because I think as we've been talking about like these role of these administrators and athletic directors, it's about including everybody and incorporating everybody, because ultimately like you can't really have this job without everybody. So for example, like you have to have sports, you have to have teams that have athletic directors. So it's kind of like you got to incorporate your coaches and what you're doing, because they kind of like make up your job, or like make up the reason why you have a job in a sense. I think another quote that I liked from him is growth is not something that takes place, then it's gone. It's a long-standing process. It takes time. It brings tons of perspective, and effective organizational change means shifting a culture, and culture takes time, which means being patient with respect to the change, and change is an incremental process. So I thought this was so important, because like, as we talked about during the COVID aspect with administrators, like y'all have to be adaptive and willing to change. So like, no one knew COVID was coming. No one knew that we were going to be shut down and stuff. So these administrators, they had to be adaptive. They had to be willing to change, but they also had to take the opinions of like the coaches who they were overseeing, because each team is different. So like when I was in COVID, like it was during basketball season. Basketball season was shut down. So it was like there was no postseason, there was nothing. So it was like we had to be adaptive to change. So it's like I'm in a sense of like, I don't have postseason. My basketball career is over. Do I go home? What do I do? Everything's closed down. I can't work out. Like it's just like it was just like a turmoil of everything. So I think this is like really, his lecture really tied into like the pandemic aspect of like, you have to incorporate everybody. This is like a whole organization thing. Like you just have to take the opinions of others, and you have to be willing to listen to people, create conversations, so those conversations can create change. And I think this ties into like everything else that this question is asking about. When did I see complex leadership in action? It was during a pandemic. Like no one knew what was going on. Everyone came together to find a way to just like, not even just make everybody happy, but just to like bring peace, because we're all confused. Everyone's like running around rambling. So I just feel like everybody came together just to like, just breathe, get everybody to breathe, relax, like just go home, regroup, stuff like that.
I think I also kind of took like the culture piece out of his lecture. But I kind of also related it to my experience at Clemson. So my freshman year was the first year that they've ever had a softball team. So we had, I think it was 17 people on the roster, none of which had really been here before. And if they had, there wasn't the rest of us. So, you know, half of us are just out of high school and have never played a college game before. And then you have some transfers, and then, you know, some experienced coaches. But at the same time, like you're trying to create that culture and you have no idea what it is. And so we relied really heavily on those transfers that had seen culture in, you know, their previous schools, of just kind of what they liked, what they didn't like. And then, you know, because I was, you know, just a freshman, and I was homeschooled in high school, so I didn't even know, you know, like what a public school high school team would look like. And so like I really didn't know what that culture was supposed to be. And obviously like we've had some ups and downs throughout the years. And you know, you see things that you like and you see things that you don't like, so you still kind of work through that. But I would say that was a big example for me.
Yeah, the culture part I definitely had written down as something to take note of. But I think the biggest piece that was super important to me was when he was talking about how if you look at the interconnected pieces, you can see how independent variables are actually dependent on each other. And so like each piece of something is part of a like bigger puzzle. And I was able to like really think about this and relate to it because I work on the club sports association here at Clemson. This is like my second year doing it, and we had a president last year who wasn't necessarily the best at like making sure that we all work together to like overcome things. And then this year we've seen a big shift because we have a new president, and he actually takes what we all say into consideration. And it's nice to hear like that a lot of struggles that some like club sports are going through are the same that like other ones are going through. So like a big one was that they just took all the parking spaces away, like while some club sports were like, that stinks, like we can't park at certain places now, you have to have a pass. Before, that wasn't like a fee that we had to implement into our dues and stuff, and then all of a sudden it is. And then hearing everyone else talk about it and realize that it wasn't just like one specific club that was suffering from it, it was like a whole community. And so that's like one of the issues that we're like trying to work on right now. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting how he talked a lot about working together and making sure everything was like connected and smooth processes.
Yeah, I think that's probably our best complex definition of adaptive leadership, is just the sum of the parts working together is going to be great. What's the saying? It's like the whole is only as good as the sum of its parts, or something like that. I don't even remember, but whatever, you get what I'm saying. I think that's kind of like our main theme here, and that all comes together to develop a culture. And for me, my specific case would be just within the soccer team. For when we won the national championship, it was so player led. It wasn't even led really by our coaches, because they allowed us to create our own culture and to create our own standards, and that just kind of they passed the reins on to our leaders, and that really, it pushed us to become leaders and to develop as leaders. And I thought that was really, really interesting, and that's kind of what it's all about, is just developing people into leaders. Okay, last question. Who is the best head coach in college sports right now? Can't say Dabo. I don't know if I would anyway, but you guys might have a different opinion, and why. And then take what you learned on team and transformational leadership into consideration during this part of the conversation. Transformational leadership is basically just building more leaders, and having an effect on the people around you. So. Eileen's thinking long and hard about it. She has no idea who the best leader is.
I can go. Two examples come to mind. I'm like very siloed in the rowing world, so I'm like, I couldn't name a not rowing coach, but Mark Mandel is the men's coach here at Williams, and he just won they instituted Division III men's national championship 2 seasons ago, and he's won both of them. And last year, his top 2 boats were undefeated against anyone that they raced. And so like getting to watch that has been really interesting. He is like very teaching based, like most of what he does in his day to day is like teach people how to do the sport better. You like ride in his boat, and he's really like soft spoken, quiet guy on land, but like once you get on the water, he like talks nonstop, and it's like constantly like giving his athletes like something to think about, something to try, something to push them. And that has been really interesting to watch. And I feel like the sort of transformational side of that has been that like his team now is so like self-assured and self-confident that they know that they've put in every bit of work they could possibly put in. And if they get out there and they do their best, like they know that they will be faster than everyone else. And so like it's been really cool to watch like some guys that like were freshmen and like have just sort of like grown up now and are so confident. And like they like come off the water on a good day or a bad day, like with sort of the exact same attitude, and that consistency is really cool. And the other rowing coach that I think of is Wes Eng. He is the women's head coach at Penn, which he's sort of one of the only rowing coaches that has moved from Division 3 to Division 1. Like there's a lot of movement from Division 1 to Division 3, but not vice versa. And he has basically brought Penn from like a meh program to like top 6 in the country in 5 years. And his athletes like show like so much professionalism and like so much joy of like they're just so excited to like be there and like have the chance, and like they're more excited about the opportunity to win than they are about like winning itself. And I think that's like a really cool value to see like passed on from a coach to the athletes.
I would have to say Dawn Staley. Like, I mean, like when I think of like the definitions that were in lecture, I'm like, she is the definition of like everything that's listed. And so like, for example, when it talks about transformational leadership, it says the process whereby a person engages with others and creates a connection that raises the level of motivation and morality in both the leader and the follower. And I mean, like, this is just like Dawn Staley, like just the type of like character she is, just her type of personality is like, she's just very like clear cut, easy going. Like she's going to give you a task, she wants the task done, and like she's going to help you along the way, but it's like she's going to push you like past your limits, but she's there to support you. And there's a reason why she's pushing you past your limits, because she sees something in you that you might not see in yourself. And it's just like watching her coach like these last, I don't even know, like 5 to 6 years, it's just like the way that she is continuously transforming her players into leaders, not just in the basketball world, but in society. Like that's like the real deal, because like most of the time when you get to college, you just have coaches that just care about the success of the program. A lot of them don't care about you like outside of basketball, because their goal is like, in order for me to have a job, I have to win. But it's like Dawn Staley, her thing is like, you might be coming here to win a national championship, to be an athlete, but it's like, what are you going to do when the ball stops bouncing? Like, what are you going to do when college is over? How can I help you be a leader outside the world? How can I help you influence people without the use of basketball? And she always asks the question, like, who are you? Like, who are you outside of basketball? Like, if I take the athlete away, like, who are you? Like, what do you do? So I think that's like so important, because also when it talks about the behaviors of a transformational leader in the lecture, it says role models for followers appear competent, articulate, ideological goals. They have high expectations, and they have a lot of motives in the followers. And I think that's like Dawn Staley's goal. Her thing is like, I'm a leader, but it's like, all you guys who are following me, I want you guys to be leaders. So you're not following me, but you're leading a group, another group of people to be successful leaders in the future.
So I don't have a ton of like, I feel like knowledge about the different. When I was reading this, I thought a lot about my current head coach at Clemson right now. And so I struggle a lot, especially in the past year, with things with my mental health. And he's definitely more of an old school coach. He's been coaching for over 30 years. And but it's been kind of cool just to see him, like, since I've started having conversations with him about different things and communicating with him about like how I'm feeling and what I'm going through and like what I need from them. He was the coach on a trip that I just recently took with USA softball to Japan. And having him there was very helpful, just because, you know, we had that connection and he kind of already knew things. But like he's really embraced kind of like that growth mindset of figuring out that, hey, like 30 years ago, maybe this wasn't, you know, something that was such a big deal in college sports, but now it is. And so like, how can he be there, you know, to kind of like support us through the process? So I even had a conversation with him today. Like, we're meeting on a monthly basis to just kind of like check in, and, you know, he's just giving me whatever like tidbits he has. And, you know, he was talking to me today, and like, this is the first year of like, next year I have to actually figure out what to do with my life. Like, until through this year, like everything's been planned out, and now it's like I got to figure it out. And so even he's like, you know, like, you might play pro, you might not, like, I don't know. And he's like, if you don't, that's okay. And you know, just really, you know, he's taking that time of like putting into like, what do I need and who I am, instead of, you know, just who I am as a player. But definitely just really seeing like that growth mindset with him of, you know, like, this is something that maybe is newer of, you know, like being focused on in athletics. And so how can he be someone that can support us through that process?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I really struggled to like find a perfect answer, or what I would have considered a perfect answer. I'm really big in the swim world, and I would have to say like the biggest person right now that I could think of would be Carol Capitini or Tanny. She's the head coach of the Texas men's and women's swim program. And last year they just placed second in the NCAA swimming and diving championship. And she was also named head coach of the 2023 World Championships. Like everything that anyone hears about her is just like amazing. She apparently is like super energetic on deck, always makes everyone feel like super included and involved. And even when people have like gone and met with her, like some of my friends, they said that like it was just the best and that they couldn't think of anywhere else that they would want to be, because she just like made them feel fuller as a person, or more full. And yeah, I just think it's really cool because not only does like her success speak volumes, but her positive and like radiating personality is what draws athletes in. And having like a super like motivational and happy coach like totally affects the entire aspect of how your team is. I've had coaches where they're mean and they cuss on deck and they just make it a nightmare, and nobody does well. It's when you have those coaches that go out of their way to make you feel better as a person that really help you like become better. And again, like she's had success as of recent, but when she started with the program, like you always knew of like Stanford and UF being like the two big like swim programs in the nation. You would never think of it being Texas. So hearing that like they've made such big headway with her as a coach just speaks volumes.
Sweet. Yeah, those are all really, really awesome people. I would say I got to rock with Deion Sanders. He's kind of crushing it right now for Colorado. They went from an 0-11 season last season. Now they're 2-0 against two pretty decent teams. They beat TCU and then they just beat Nebraska. And I don't know if you guys like are on Instagram or see any of this stuff, but like there's like a bunch of videos of him in the locker room like hyping his team up, and it's just like that's the type of guy you really want to play for. And I think the definition of like a good coach is someone that you trust and you go out on the field and you fight for him. And I think that's one of the things he does a really, really good job of doing, is just inspiring his players. He's trying to mold them into better men and train them to not just be good football players, but to be good men off the field as well. And I think that's really important. So yeah, I would rock with Deion Sanders for now. We'll see if Dabo goes 11-1, then I'm gonna have to switch back to Dabo. We'll see. Anyway, appreciate you guys. This was great. Perfect timing, 32 minutes. But yeah, there we go. I'm gonna stop the recording now.